Explorers, it's your adventure podcast hostess with the mostest, Katie Staples. I'm going to share my travel stories, tips, and tricks for exploring and creating unforgettable experiences and memories. Find me on Instagram at the.great.escape.podcast so you can follow along and I can hear from you. Today, I'm so excited to share with you all my stories from working at the Belize Zoo for a few summers. And I'm super excited because it's basically like the coolest thing I've ever done. Belize is my favorite country. I've been there 5 times, and the rest of my mainland and island stories will be on a later episode. Today is all about the 2 summers I got to spend training jaguars and raising monkeys and other badass stuff as a keeper intern at the Belize Zoo. It's known as the best little zoo in the world. It all started when a nature documentary was being filmed in the area, and a woman named Sharon Matola was caring for the wildlife they used. When the filming was done in 1983, the producers and crew up and left Sharon with a bunch of animals. She decided she would create the first wildlife rescue and rehabilitation in the whole country. Today, the Belize Zoo is home to over 160 animals representing 43 species. And the best part about this is the only animals there are ones that were either born there or are being rehabilitated or cannot be released back into the wild. Their mission is to inspire passion to protect Belize's wildlife and their habitats through wildlife rescue and rehabilitation, engaging educational experiences and conservation science. The cool thing is the enclosures are the actual natural habitat or mimic it as best as I've ever seen. The animals are not put on display. You could visit all day, and if Carlos the puma wanted to hide in the corner and not be seen, you weren't going to see him. The animals and their welfare are so important here, and it doesn't matter as much if a human gets to see every single one every visit. Belize is my favorite country. It is the second smallest in Central America. Belize started as a British colony called British Honduras, so their national language is English. It's quite easy for Americans to get around there due to its small size and the fact that most people speak English and accept the US dollar. I've been fortunate enough to visit Belize 5 times. The first was a study abroad in college during summer 2008. We spent 2 weeks visiting different ecosystems like the rainforest, pine savanna, island reefs, mangroves, and our group visited the Belize Zoo twice, one trip during the day and one at night. There's a lot of nocturnal animals there, so this way we got to see as many as possible. It was so hands-on. I got to feed and pet a lot of dangerous stuff, and I thought it was amazing since all the zoos in the United States have like barricades and moats and stuff. So when I got back from the trip, I showed my family pictures, especially of the zoo, and we saw on the zoo website they had internships available. So that led to my next trip the following summer. My family spent a week adventuring around the mainland and Key Caulker and then dropped me off at the TEC before heading to the airport. I spent the rest of the summer as a zookeeper intern and had so much fun that I went back to do it again a few years later. While I worked there, I stayed at the Tropical Education Center, or TEC. It is an 84-acre facility about a mile down the road from the zoo that consists of lodging and facilities for both tourists as well as students and researchers. Their accommodations range from the pond houses to the pine cabin to forest cabanas to the dorms to just regular tent camping. The main building has the kitchen and dining hall, library, and conference room where research and education groups like my study abroad have classes. I had my own room in the dorm off from the main building. Outside, there was a covered sink area, a shower house, and then a walkway to the toilet house. And I remember doing my best not to drink after it got dark because I was afraid of walking outdoors in the dark if I had to use the bathroom. Like, what if a critter started to follow me or visit me in the middle of the night? Now, there were a few critter friends that visited me sometimes in my room, like spiders, lizards. I had breakfast in the main building. And if there was a tourist group or research group, they got a nice hot breakfast of fry jacks and eggs and fresh fruit and bacon or sausage. And I'd get to have some of that. If there wasn't another group that day, I had cereal. So I definitely looked forward to there being some paid visitors. Dinner was the same, awesome hot dinner with the guests, or if I was the only one there, the cook would leave me leftovers from lunch for me to reheat. I'm not complaining, it was really good. However, after over a month of chicken, beans, and rice for lunch and sometimes dinner every day, I started buying some other things from the store just to mix it up. Some of the zookeepers taught me phrases in Mayan, and the only one I can really remember is Ma and mascate la rosa talacache, which is I don't want any more chicken, beans, and rice. The zoo gave me a little 3-speed bicycle that I rode up the gravel road to the zoo each day and back. My job centered around feeding and cleaning. Most animals were fed in the morning and some again in the afternoon. The keepers were assigned their animal groups for the day. So some got the cats, some got the birds, the other mammals, etc. We would count out the number of dishes we needed for our group and then start preparing the food. The cats got a combination of beef, liver, and chicken, including chicken feet, which was the jaguar's favorite. And one time there was a special on pig heads. So we got pig heads, and the jaguars loved those. The birds would get the most amazing fruit salad ever. The pantry there was always full of papaya and mango and watermelon and bananas, lots and lots of bananas. And about once a week, we get a huge delivery to restock it. Then we'd load up the plates in our 5-gallon buckets and take them around to the enclosures. Now, some of the animals' enclosures, we could go right in with them, like the birds. Some of the animals' food was put in the smaller enclosure within the big habitat, like the cats. Another huge part of the job was cleaning the food bowls, cleaning the cages, cleaning the kitchen. And we'd also create enrichment for the animals, like putting chunks of fish in an ice block for the otters so they have something to play with, or hiding the monkeys and birds' food in crevices throughout the enclosure so it simulates real foraging. And of course, I got to play with some of the animals too. Now, another thing I got to do is visitor education, which was one of my favorite parts. As I walked around the zoo, I could answer questions for guests or help them see where someone was camouflaged in their enclosure. And Wednesdays were cruise ship day. That was the day that trips to the zoo from the port happened, and we'd have the boas out for people to hold and understand that, look, they're nothing to be afraid of. The Belize Zoo is definitely known for their beautiful jaguars. Remember, the only way animals come to live at the zoo is because they were born there, they were injured or orphaned and can't go back into the wild for their own protection, or they're being rehabbed and maybe released. Well, most of the jaguars arrived because they were killing cattle or sheep and the farmers reported them. The zoo has an agreement with a lot of farmers. Instead of killing the jaguar to protect their livestock and their livelihood, the farmers call the zoo and the zoo will come out and humanely trap the cats and bring them back to the zoo. Now, if they were re-released back into the wild, there's a huge likelihood that they would continue to kill livestock. And next time, they may not take an animal from a farmer that was as patient or friendly. So for their safety, they're not re-released. They are acclimated to humans and their new environment at the zoo. The most famous jaguar was Junior Buddy. His mother, Springfield, was a sheep killer in the town of Springfield and was brought to the zoo while pregnant. She gave birth to Junior just a few days after arriving and rejected the kitten. So, to save Junior, Sharon and the zookeepers bottle fed him around the clock for months. And one day he got big enough where regular play was too rough with the humans. So, he got his own enclosure near his mom and he became a star in Belize. Everyone came to pet Junior Buddy and feed him treats. His favorite was chicken feet. And he loved people. And once he knew you a little bit, then he really enjoyed you coming to visit him at his enclosure. We would play red light, green light. So he would see me come up to the pen, and then he would kind of get into a stalk position. And then I would turn around, and then he would get up and start to move a little bit. And I would turn back around and he would pause. And we would do that again and again until he finally jumped at the fence at me, which of course all the tourists thought that that was amazing and didn't understand I was actually working there and knew this gigantic cat. When the problem jaguars come to live at the zoo, they're obviously wild. So they live in their own pens in the back and they get access during the day to a larger enclosure with a pool and toys. The keepers would hand feed them through the fence as much as they could to acclimate the cats to people. When I was there, 13 jaguars called the Belize Zoo home. And the jaguars that were calmer around people would get access to this tunnel system throughout the zoo where they could explore and overlook the zoo pathways and the people below. There's 5 cats native to Belize, including the jaguar. The other 4 from biggest to smallest are the puma, the ocelot, the elusive jaguarundi, and the margay. Carlos the puma was at the zoo because he had been someone's pet for years and could no longer be taken care of properly. He was pretty friendly to those that he knew. And one of the ocelots was Ollie, who is also pretty cool with the keepers, yet we didn't go into either Carlos or Ollie's enclosures with them. I didn't get to see much of the jaguarundi when I was there because they're mainly active at night. And then we had a few margays that are cute, more house cat size, curious little cuties. One of my absolute favorite animals native to Belize is the kinkajou. These critters, also called honey bears, are related to the raccoon, yet I like to think that they look more like a cross between a monkey and a cat. They have a semi-prehensile tail, so it can't fully support their weight like a monkey can hang from theirs, yet they can sturdy themselves with it and carry things. My favorite kinkajou at the zoo was Ellie, who loved to sniff my hair. Of course, if you're ever in the Belize rainforest, you're likely to encounter 2 species of monkeys. There's the loud howler monkey, which can be heard from 3 miles away, and you'll see the acrobatic spider monkeys. Both of them get a lot of fruit throughout the day and could snack on any bugs that came into their enclosure. Unfortunately, people like to think of these monkeys as good pets. Fun fact, they do not make good pets. And one summer, an orphan howler was brought to the zoo. His mom had been killed, so the poachers could take the baby from her, and they were caught carrying him in a plastic bag trying to sell him. He needed bottle feeding day and night because he was so young. And being male, he couldn't be released immediately into the troop of monkeys at the zoo. They already had a dominant male that would almost certainly be territorial and aggressive towards a new male, even a baby. So he got to be raised by the keepers and later went to live at a monkey sanctuary. Belize is definitely known for their beautiful birds. The biggest bird of prey there is the harpy eagle. Males weigh 9 to 11 pounds and have a 6 or 7 foot wingspan, so they're slightly larger than most bald eagles. I got to hand feed them in their pen one time with zoo director Sharon Matola, and it was definitely one of the more daunting experiences there. Their ankles are the size of my wrist, and in the wild, they pull monkeys from trees. Probably the most famous bird species there is the macaw, and the zoo has several beautiful macaws who, fun fact, nest on the ground. Well, one year, this macaw pair hatched 3 baby macaws, and a keeper that was there on night duty heard these crazy screams in the middle of the night, and he ran to the enclosure where fire ants were basically eating the babies alive. Now, all the animals' enclosures are locked for security reasons. So he would have had to run all the way to the back, grab his keys, come back to open it up. So, to save some time, he quickly doused the babies with water to get the fire ants off, then got the keys, opened up the enclosure, and got the hatchlings off the ground. Well, like most bird species, now that their babies smelled like a human and would therefore draw attention to predators, the parents rejected the babies. So they were so young, they had months left of relying on their parents for survival. So they were taken to the back of the zoo and hand raised by the keepers. This became the first time in Belize history that hatchling macaws were raised by people and could be studied at a high level. We would weigh them each day and measure how much food they got, and eventually their feathers started growing out, which was super cool to watch. Belize is home to 9 species of parrot, including the scarlet macaw. And one of my other favorites are the red lorids. The adults in the enclosure near the front of the zoo would mimic humid sounds, and they could do a coughing sound, laughing, and ask, "Are you okay?" And like the macaws, I was able to help hand rear a few baby red lorids as well. The national animal of Belize is the tapir, and there's several that live at the Belize Zoo. They are most closely related to horses and rhinos, and yet I think they look more similarly to a pig, just with like a flexible snout that they use to reach plants. They are quite docile and friendly, and I got to spend time taking care of the adults as well as any orphans that found their way to the zoo. This little guy's name is Indy. Another animal that looks like a pig or really a wild boar is the collared peccary, which is actually more closely related to the rhino than pigs. And they are not docile and friendly like tapirs. They're also known as javelinas, and they could be quite aggressive when protecting their territory and young, and they've been known to attack pets. Their habitat actually extends up into Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And Molly and I encountered one at night in New Mexico last summer, which was an experience. An orphan peccary came to the zoo named Ari. The full time keepers have a lot of chores to do throughout the day. So if a new baby came to us when I was there, I usually got to tend to it. I started out bottle feeding him and then moved to fruit and veggies. And this sweet baby loved his surrogate mother, and we actually made the local paper. One time, one of the adult javelinas died in the enclosure, and it wasn't that old. So the local vet and some vet school students came to the zoo and did a necropsy to determine the cause of death. They found puncture wounds on its sides, like from the other javelina's tusks. And I'm not sure if that was the direct cause of death or if it was infection from the wounds. However, it was a cool experience to be a part of. The zoo has a few zoo dogs that live there, and we had a fourth dog come join the pack. He was a stray, and the vet and the vet students actually came back to do his neuter surgery. Now, other than the cool animals, there were other incredible things I got to experience. One of my first nights there, I was sleeping alone in the TEC dorm building, and I woke up around 2:30 in the morning to the weirdest sensation. Everything was like shaking, and it was so violent the pictures on my shelves fell over. I had no idea what was happening, and I was like mostly asleep. So, was it a tornado rattling the building? What was happening? I woke up the next morning and heard the cook say it was a 7.1 magnitude earthquake with an epicenter off the Honduran coast, like 100 miles away. So then I wondered if it shook my building so much, was there any damage at the zoo? Were the enclosures of the problem jaguars damaged and now they were running loose? Was I going to open the back gate and come in with my little bike and boom, attack? Thankfully, no. Yet that was a very interesting next day at the zoo after that. My only mode of transportation besides walking was my little 3-speed bike. And so a few times I decided to visit a restaurant called Cheers about 2 miles up the road. Well, it was an uphill journey in the hot sun, and you didn't necessarily want to make that trip by yourself on your little bike. However, the first summer I lived there, the TEC didn't have Wi Fi, and I was looking forward to uploading pictures to Facebook and Skyping with my family. Remember Skype before Zoom? Now, Belize has 5 major highways, and by highways, I mean unmarked, paved, 2-lane roads. The zoo is right on the George Price Highway that runs east to west through central Belize. And the TEC is about a mile off of that. There were a few times I'd walk to the main road and I'd catch one of the public buses. It was like $1 US to take me the 2 miles to Cheers to grab some food and get Wi Fi. However, these buses were first come, first served. And so many people were getting on the buses at the beginning of the route in Belize City and taking the whole road to either Belmopan, the capital, or further west. So many times on the weekends, I'd see a bus coming and I'd get all excited to get out of the heat. And by get out of the heat, I mean go on a vehicle with open windows because there was no AC. And yet, as it got closer, I could read the sign that said it was already full. So one time after waiting like an hour and seeing multiple buses go by, a woman driving her car stopped and asked where I was going. And apparently I was not worried about stranger danger because I told her and she offered me a ride. So naturally, I just hop in with this random person and she took me up to Cheers. Don't try this at home, folks. Oh man, my first summer there, I was taking food around to the enclosures and I didn't realize a tree whose leaves rubbed up against my face multiple times was this fun plant called poisonwood. It's related to poison ivy, sumac, and oak, and it causes, you guessed it, rashes. So it started out as just a small section on my neck and then grew to my shoulder, face, and then my eyes swelled shut. They took me to the hospital in Belmopan where I was given a steroid shot and meds. And how much did it cost me? Zero whole dollars. This may be a developing country, and man, oh man, is this a healthcare system I can get behind. Now, one summer when I was there, another zoo intern and I overlapped a weekend. So she and I took a bus up to Cheers for dinner one night. Belize doesn't practice daylight savings time. So in the summer, they are 2 hours behind Eastern Standard Time where I live, and sunset is like 6:30. So it was dark by the time the bus dropped us off on the highway at the TEC's stop. So then we still had a mile walk down the unlit road to our dorm building. Well, we're walking and all of a sudden we see headlights behind us and we're like, who in the world is driving down this road that only leads to the TEC after hours? So being two young ladies by ourselves, we freak out. We jumped into the bushes and hid, and the car came to a stop, and you could definitely tell someone saw us, and we waited like 10 minutes for them to leave, and then we went back to the road and ran to our dorm. And then when we were in the light, we realized that we were covered in black stuff, almost like soot, except we realized it wasn't soot. It was poison wood sap. And going back to the hospital again with my eyes swollen shut was not on this year's agenda. So I took a long shower and scrubbed myself like I'd never scrubbed before. And fortunately, it was okay. That zoo dog that I told you got neutered by the vet students, well, he came to the zoo as a super malnourished little energetic thing with several parasites in him. And by in him, I mean burrowed into his face and his leg. If you'd like to see what nightmares are made of, Google bot fly. Long story short, they're fly larvae that tunnel into animals and human skin and grow there for several weeks until they pop out on their own. Well, they're very uncomfortable in certain spots of your body. So we removed several from the new dog's face and leg and then sprayed him with a purple antibacterial. I got a bot fly in my ankle my first trip to Belize during my study abroad. It had to be surgically removed when I got back to Virginia. I'll tell that story during a later episode on Belize. Another critter that decided it was going to get me was probably the craziest thing I had happen there. I had been prepping food for the animals and washed my hands, then went to dry them on a towel. And when I did that, my finger instantly felt like it was being lit on fire and stabbed at the same time. I had been stung by a scorpion who was hiding in the towel. I had been so good about checking my shoes for spiders and scorpions before putting them on, yet I never thought to look on both sides of a towel. The pain was excruciating for 30 minutes. And the weirdest side effect was my tongue was numb for the rest of the day, which is common, and it was not helpful when speaking to the tourists. Now, sadly, the zoo and TEC were damaged by Hurricane Lisa in 2022, yet were rebuilt into even better facilities. Please go visit and support them if you're ever remotely close to the zoo. And you too can be a keeper intern and have some amazing experiences. They still have that program going on. Learn more about the Belize Zoo on their Instagram at Belize Zoo and their website, belizezoo.org. Have you been to the best little zoo in the world? What was your favorite part? Send me your pictures. Find me on Instagram at the.great.escape.podcast and send me a message. Don't forget to hit subscribe so that you can follow along and dream big for your journeys on the Great Escape. See you next time, adventurers.